You have been asking God the same question for so long that it aches, and every single time you ask, the answer is the same crushing silence. You have started to wonder if He is even there, or if He ever was. But before you decide that the silence means He left, you need to hear this. The silence of God is not His absence, it is His surgery. And a good surgeon does not narrate the operation while he is still cutting. He does not stop in the middle of the incision to explain every move. He works in a focused silence that feels like abandonment from the table. You are not lying in an empty room while heaven ignores your pain. You are lying under the hands of a God who is removing something. The silence has a purpose, even when the purpose is hidden from your view. There is a reason the silence came, and there are 5 of them coming now. Each one is a thing the silence is doing to you at this very moment. And underneath all 5 is one truth the enemy is desperate to keep hidden. Christ already absorbed the only real abandonment that has ever existed. Which means your silence is discipline, and it is never once desertion. So stay on the table to the end, because you need to see what He removes. What He takes out in the silence is the very thing that was killing you. 1. It exposes what you were actually praying to. A woman has prayed the same exact prayer for 14 long months. She has asked for the same thing so often that the words feel worn out. And if she is honest, she cannot remember the last time she prayed for anything else. Her whole relationship with God has quietly shrunk down to a single request. She is not seeking Him anymore. She is seeking the yes she needs from Him. That is the first thing the silence is doing, and it is doing it to you. It quietly reveals the difference between loving God and simply using Him. The silence exposes exactly what you were actually praying to all along. When the answer is instant, you never have to ask why you even came. But when heaven goes quiet, the real object of your worship gets revealed. You find out whether you wanted God or wanted the answer wearing His name. A gift can look identical to the giver until the gift is finally delayed. Then the delay asks a question you have been avoiding for a very long time. Would you still show up if the answer you are waiting for never came? Would you still call Him good if the door you keep knocking on stays shut? Sit with that honestly, because your answer is the entire point of the silence. You have been treating the answer like the prize and the wait like the punishment. But look at what the Father did on the day of the cross. His own Son asked for the cup to pass, and the Father said no. Then the Father gave the world the one thing that nobody had asked for. Nobody prayed for a crucified Messiah, and yet it was the only thing that could save. The silence is teaching you to want the giver more than any gift He holds. A delayed gift will either expose an idol or deepen a love, and the choice is yours. When you have the giver, you already hold everything the gift was ever pointing to. Because the giver already gave you Himself when you did not even know to ask. 2. It kills your addiction to feeling saved. The room is full and every hand in the place is lifted high. The music swells and the crowd is swept up into a wave of feeling. And one person is standing in the middle of it feeling absolutely nothing. They used to feel the presence like electricity running down their arms. Now they sing the very same words, and the room feels completely empty. That is the second thing the silence is doing, and it is doing it to you. It is killing your quiet addiction to the feeling of being saved. You had started to treat the presence like a drug instead of a person. A faith that runs entirely on goosebumps is not actually a faith at all. It is a mood, and a mood will abandon you the moment life gets hard. God loves you too much to let your salvation rest on a chemical high. So, He removes the feeling in order to show you what is left underneath. Think back to the moment you first started doubting whether you were saved. Be honest about whether anything truly changed except the way that you felt. The emotion left, and you assumed that God had walked out right behind it. The feeling was a gift, but it was never the foundation you were standing on. But your salvation was never anchored in your feelings for a single second. The tomb was empty on that Sunday morning, as a cold and solid fact. It was true before Mary felt anything, and before the disciples believed it. The resurrection did not wait for anyone's goosebumps to make it real. It happened in the quiet, and it was finished long before anyone celebrated. Your salvation is a fact carved in an empty grave, not a feeling in your chest. You are not less saved on the numb days than you were on the fire days. And that fact stays completely true on every morning you feel nothing at all. Hold through this next one, because the third reason is the one that decides whether your faith survives the year. 3. It teaches obedience without reward. A man is still tithing even though the account keeps getting tighter. He is still serving on Sunday, still showing up, still doing the right thing. And he is getting absolutely nothing back that he can actually point to. No breakthrough and no open door and no sign that any of it works. He is starting to wonder why he even bothers to keep going at all. That is the third thing the silence is doing, and it is doing it to you. It is teaching you an obedience that expects no reward in return. This is the reason so many walk away in exactly this kind of season. Anyone on earth will happily follow God while he is paying out blessings. The crowds followed Jesus for the free bread right up until the bread stopped. The silence is where he finds out who you are when he is not paying. So ask yourself how much of your obedience has really been a transaction. Ask whether you have been serving God or quietly negotiating with him. If the serving stops the moment the blessing does, it was never obedience. It was an investment, and you are simply waiting on the return. The silence burns away the hired hands and leaves only the sons and daughters. But go to the garden the night before the cross and watch the son. He asked the Father for another way, and the answer came back as no. There was no reward waiting and no blessing coming, only a cross ahead. And Jesus obeyed anyway, with nothing in it for him except your salvation. That obedience in the silence is the very thing that purchased you. So the God who obeyed with no reward is teaching you to do the same. The obedience he is building in you now is the obedience no reward could ever buy. Because obedience that survives the silence is the only kind that was ever real. 4. It strips the audience out of your faith. There was a testimony once, and everyone was watching to see how it ended. You told people what you were believing God for, and they were watching closely. But months have passed now, and there is still no update left to give. So quietly, without ever deciding to, you stopped mentioning the situation at all. You could not bear to keep answering the same question with nothing new. That is the fourth thing the silence is doing, and it is doing it to you. It is stripping every last member of the audience out of your faith. He is not embarrassing you. He is refining you where no one can clap. God will let your story go publicly silent for one very specific reason. He wants to find out whether you are truly believing or only performing. A faith with a crowd around it can be a show, and he knows the difference. So he lets the update disappear, and he simply watches what is left. Think about the version of you that exists when nobody is watching you believe. That version, alone in the room, is the only version that is actually real. The one who prays when no one is left to see it is the true you. Ask whether your faith was ever meant for the crowd or only meant for him. But look at how the Son of God actually died on that hill. Almost every follower had scattered, and the crowd had already gone home. He finished the most important work in history with hardly a witness left. He simply did not need an audience to complete what he came to do. And that is your proof that God finishes what he starts without a crowd. The silence is not God forgetting your story in front of everyone. The story did not stall. It simply moved somewhere the crowd could not follow. It is God writing the ending in a room where only he can see. Stay here, because the last one is the reason most people quit right before the answer arrives. 5. It proves whether you loved the giver or the gift. Job sits in a pile of ashes, scraping his skin with a shard of broken pottery. He has lost his children and his wealth and his health and his comfort. And from where he is sitting, heaven is completely and utterly silent. But Job cannot see what is happening in the throne room high above him. Heaven is already speaking on his behalf while he hears absolutely nothing. That is the fifth thing the silence is doing, and it is doing it to you. It is proving whether you loved the giver or only ever loved his gifts. This is the deepest test of the silence, and it is the last one for a reason. Here is the truth that Job simply could not see from the ash heap. God's silence and God's activity have never once been the same thing. He is never more at work than in the seasons you cannot hear him. The enemy is counting on you reading the silence as a verdict against you, but you have been doing something without even realizing that you do it. You have been measuring God's love by nothing but his response time. You decided that a quiet God must be a distant God or an angry one, but the delay was never a measure of his heart toward you. And here is the deepest reason that you can trust the silence completely. That single lie has convinced more people to quit than any other lie he tells. For 3 hours, the sky went black over a hill outside Jerusalem. The son cried out to his father, and for once heaven did not answer. That was the only silence in all of history that was ever truly real. He absorbed the full weight of that abandonment so that you never would. So when you cry out now, heaven never has to stay silent in judgment again. The silence you feel is mercy, because the only silence of wrath fell on him. Your silence is discipline from a father, and it is never once desertion. So look again at the table you have been lying on this entire time. The room was never empty. The surgeon was simply doing his careful work. And now you can finally see what the silence was actually removing from you. He was cutting out the false faith so the real one could finally breathe. Remember how many times God went quiet on the people he loved the most. God went quiet on Job, and heaven was already arguing on his behalf. God went quiet on Joseph, and the throne was already being prepared. God went quiet on Elijah, and the fire had already been ordered. God went quiet on the sun, and that was the only silence that was ever real. And he took that silence so that yours would never have to be. Every quiet season in your life is a father operating, not a father leaving. He does not narrate while he is cutting, but he never once leaves the room. The hands you cannot feel are the same hands that were nailed down for you. The scar you will carry is proof of the very thing he removed to save you. So do not climb off the table one single day before the work is done. The patient who runs from the surgeon does not escape pain. He only keeps the disease. One day you will thank him for the very silence you are begging to end. The answer is coming, and it will make sense of every silent month. If this explained a silence you have been carrying, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this reach someone who is about to give up too soon. Then comment the number of the reason that just explained your last 2 years. And subscribe to this channel so the next word reaches you right in time. It needs to reach you before the silence convinces you that he left. Because he never left. He was operating, and he is almost finished with you,